maybe you missed it. The Steelers have said bye-bye to Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett. They have new quarterbacks. It's all the flavor. New quarterbacks there hanging out in Pittsburgh. So if you didn't see what Tomlin had to say, the Steelers coach, Mike Tomlin, said that Russell Wilson is in the pole position, which I think was also a video game back then, but in the pole position as the quarterback in Pittsburgh. But he said that the 2021 first-round pick, who failed with the Chicago Bears, Justin Fields, will also have an opportunity to compete when the time is right. Close quote. Okay, so let us discuss the question. Mike Tomlin says that Russell Wilson is in the pole position at quarterback for the Steelers. What does this actually mean? So I've got canned sardines, Japanese, and slot machine. And we will combine all of these things together, and we are going to make sense of the nonsensical is what we're going to do. So number one. All right, thing broke. No. Anyway, all right, so listen. Mike Tomlin serving up spam is what he's doing. That's my way of approaching this, right? Like, it's filler is what it is. It's spam. It's the stuff they put in hot dogs. He knew, Tomlin, going in when he addressed the media, that he was going to be asked about the quarterbacks. An obvious question. That's why wouldn't you ask? Of course you're going to ask Mike Tomlin about that. So you've heard of canned sardines. Well, how about this? This is a canned answer. Not quite canned sardines, but canned answer for Mike Tomlin. And the pole position, if you're not a racing fan, you might not know what that is. Bad job by you if you don't. But the pole position, you start the race at the very front. You're in the number one position. Doesn't mean you're going to win the race. Doesn't guarantee anything, but you're starting out in the front of the field. So the way I interpret it, after a minutes-long MALLER investigation of Mike Tomlin parsing his words, Mike Tomlin, the answer is TBD, to be determined. So Mike Tomlin essentially said that Russell Wilson is in the top spot because he has more experience. And that's why he's there. But that is not a ringing endorsement of Russell Wilson, at least not on this side of the microphone. So the way I interpreted it, he's like, well, we have to put somebody there, and Russ has done it, so we'll put him there. But when training camp comes around, Justin Fields will have a chance to be QB1. He will have an opportunity. It's a quarterback competition. Right? Tomlin confirmed the chatter that we have been hearing leading up to these comments from the Steelers head coach, and he has given substance to the fact that this is a wide-open competition that for now, yeah, Russell Wilson, you have to put somebody at the top of the depth chart, and that's Russell Wilson, but there's no guarantee. Now, I would argue both these guys stink, and you got to play one of them, so maybe you play the younger guy because Russ has been done for 5 years, and Fields hasn't sucked for that long, so you go that direction. Now, page 2. We head to Viva Las Vegas, which is really just Orlando, where the Raiders, who made a move in free agency, they added a quarterback, Gardner Minshew Mania. Later the Colts, former Eagle, former Jaguar back in the day. So Gardner Minshew went to the Raiders in free agency, and the assumption is that he is the de facto starter for the Raiders, but not so fast. Not so fast, because the Raiders head coach, Antonio Pierce, chiming in from Orlando, and Antonio Pierce says to not rule out Aiden O'Connell. He says, do not rule out Aiden O'Connell as a Raiders starter in 2024. He gave a long-winded answer, but the meat of it, he says, at the end of the day, not the start of the day, the end of the day, is a quote. He said, listen, Aiden O'Connell played his ass off. Wow. Hopefully he can get a new ass. Said he played his ass off. He did a hell of a job for us. You're talking about a kid that has the mental toughness to play in the National Football League, said the Raiders coach. Whatever happens and whatever we do, it has to go through Aiden O'Connell. He says, being honest, with you. He's earned that right. That's the money quote. He's earned that right. So let us discuss the question. Antonio Pierce says Aiden O'Connell has earned the right to compete for the starting job with the Raiders. And do you believe that? So I'm going to go first. You can chime in if you want, but I will go first. I am a skeptic. I am skeptical that this is based in reality here, and here's why. I actually saw Aiden O'Connell play, and he might have lost his ass on the field. He also lost a lot of passes. Now, the Raiders will spin this and say, well, look how he did at the end of the year. Look at that. And I say, it's like judging a baseball player on his offensive stats when they've been eliminated. And teams get bamboozled by that all the time in baseball. So the way I look at Aiden O'Connell, when the games mattered, when the Raiders had a chance to make the playoffs, a legitimate chance to make the playoffs, he played like rotting poo. And then when the Raiders were, for all intents purposes, eliminated, he played well. So what do you do with that, right? The first 6 starts of Aiden O'Connell's career, I actually saw the first one, was at SoFi with the Raiders. Garoppolo out, and he got the start. So I saw him in person, and in the first 6 starts, he had 3 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Passer rating in the 70s. The last 4 starts with the Raiders dead and buried, he went out there and had 8 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a passer rating around 100. Was legit. So who is the real Aiden O'Connell? You might also remember against Kansas City, the Raiders, the surprise performance at Arrowhead. And in that game, if we remember correctly, the Raiders decided not to use the forward pass in the second half. Remember, they had that long stretch. I don't think they completed a pass in the second half of that game, and they ended up doing very well at Arrowhead Stadium. But if you look at O'Connell overall from start to finish, he's ranked 26th in quarterback rating in the NFL, 27th in yards per pass attempt, 29th in completion percentage. Bad to the bone. Bad to the bone. So with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell, right now the Raiders likely will draft a quarterback unless they end up trading down. But the Raiders are going to take a quarterback more likely than not. And so with Minshew and with Aiden O'Connell, Antonio Pierce is following the Japanese tradition of wabi-sabi, is what he's doing, right? Yeah, and that is the term for flawed beauty and perfection in imperfection, because that's the Raider quarterback room. Flawed beauty. Wabi-sabi. All right, final point. So over the weekend, the Chiefs, the reigning champions, it was off our watch. We were not here. But there was a transaction that was agreed upon. Kansas City said bye-bye to defensive back L'Jarius Sneed. Even though there were reports last week nobody wanted him, nobody wanted to pay him, they found somebody to pay him. Tennessee. What's going on with Tennessee? I thought Tennessee was trying to suck, and they've actually made some moves to improve the roster. It's bizarre. Anyway, Kansas City going to receive a 2025 third-round pick. In addition to a 2024 7th-round pick swap for L'Jarius Sneed, who is going to sign a massive contract with the Tennessee football team. So how did you score? How did you score L'Jarius Sneed and the trade between the Chiefs and the Titans? So on the MALLER report card, the report card of record, Tennessee gets a B+ on this trade. The Chiefs get a C. And really a C-. I wanted to go lower, but I'll be fair. I went C minus on this. And here's why. Because the Chiefs, they lose the player, and they're not going to get a player in return that is going to be as effective as the player that they lost, just based on the comps, the math of the NFL draft. And so you now have a blank spot on your bingo card. Kansas City is giving up a productive player. Was he the greatest defensive back in the NFL? No, of course not. But you're giving him up for pennies on the dollar, and then the Tennessee side, they get the B+. I can't go higher than that because you're paying this guy a ton of money, and there's a large block of history of NFL players who play well for good teams, get paid, go to crap teams, and we never hear from them again. So based on the comps of that, you start thinking, well, is this really going to work out? He's been a good player, but the Titans are mostly irrelevant. So how does this all play out? But for Kansas City, you give up, again, a player that was helping you out. You won the Super Bowl last couple of years, and a third-round pick, which is the spin of the slot machine. And you're hoping that all 3 lemons or cherries come up on the slot machine. You're like, oh, come on, I need 3 lemons, 3 cherries. I'm good. I'm good on that. Now, last season, Sneed covered the opponent's number one receiver on at least 65% of the play. So he was the guy that most often was going against the other team's number one receiver. That's, in fact, the highest in the NFL. 7 times during the regular season that led the league going against the number one opposition receiver. And that's according to the nerd stats over at the NFL. Only once were any of those receivers able to catch more than 2 passes. So that's a pretty good stat. The one time that happened was against the Raiders. And so one time against the Raiders. And then other than that, you look all season, another stat that's in favor of L'Jarius Sneed, why he's getting paid from the Tennessee football team. He did not allow a touchdown catch to the nearest defender in coverage until the divisional round against the Buffalo Bills. So that's also in his favor. So the Chiefs give up on that. I got an email from a guy who saw that the Chiefs have the 8th most salary cap space in the NFL. So this guy sent me an email. Did you see this, Ben? Like, the guy's getting all horny because they have a lot of salary cap space. And I'm like, well, there's no one left. Like, and I don't understand why fans get excited about that. I don't get, like, who cares? You're not the one paying the bills. You're not the one doing the finances. Why the hell do you care if you have a lot of salary cap space or no salary cap space? It makes no sense to me. And yet I get these reactions from, oh, we're doing great. We got all this salary. I'm like, no, that's bad.